Ellen White Reconsidered, a series of presentations for people with questions about Ellen White and her writings. Today's presentation is New Acquisitions of Old Books. Welcome. I've had this topic in mind for a couple of weeks because recently I was able to come up with the money sufficient to pay for some new books, actually old books, but they're new to me and new to my collection. You may see over there over my shoulder, they're missing on that tiny shelf. So they are little books. And I want to take you through some of them quickly. Let's start with this one. This looks a little bit odd, the way that it's aged in the back, but this is Ellen White's first two books, earliest books, and she made them available together in early 1857. So that was after she had already published the first two books. The first book was published in 51, the second one in 54. Then she started publishing testimonies in 55. So this book is unique because not only does it have her first two books in it, but it has the testimonies as well, the first testimonies. So we've got testimony number 1, testimony for church number 2, and then in the end, he attached to the front of this, sewed it through, another one of the testimonies, and you can see it actually, it's worn off the first page, but it's been through a lot. So I display this, but I just want to tell you a little bit about it. It comes in handy in a number of ways to have these early books. Just this week, I was talking with another content creator about the two references in Ellen White's earliest writings, which are repeated in this first book, of the golden card that she mentions in passing in describing the angels leaving from heaven to earth. Let's take a look at the two quotations. Okay, you'll notice here the different instances where golden card is mentioned, but they actually boil down to just two. If you'll see here, these are later books published after her death, 1922. Early Writings is a republication of this book, plus volume 1 of Spiritual Gifts. Life Sketches is also later, 1915. We're getting back to the original account, 1849, in August of 1849, which is when the first accounts were written, and these were gathered for the first book. Then we get back to this first broadside, and a broadside is a piece of paper that's printed on one side, the other side is not printed. So a lot of times people would write their letter on the backside and send the other for people to read. So you'll notice that this was back in January of 1849 when she had this particular vision. And there are only two references to golden card. All these others are just repetitions of the same thing. So let's go to the second one first, because I think it actually gives a more general reference. So here we are. Let's read this together.
All the angels that are commissioned to visit the earth hold a golden card, which they present to the angels at the gates of the city as they pass in and out.
Okay, there we have it. Here in this instance, it refers to angels that are going to the earth. They hold a golden card, which they presented to the angels at the gates of the city as they pass in and out. Now, some people have assumed that this golden card is like an ID card. But if it's an ID card, why would they need it in leaving? My thinking, and this was based on another person's reflections on this, is that the card is actually a mission record, because heaven is a place of order, and the Bible describes the books of heaven. So this would be an indication of the mission as they check out and as they check in. Perhaps this is a high-tech way of recording. Maybe it's more than we can imagine. She just says it's a card. She doesn't say what was written on it. She doesn't know whether it was handwritten or whether it's digital of some sort. This may be a very high-tech way of keeping track of missions. But we see here that it's when they pass in and out. Now let's take a look at the other reference, and that was actually before this one, but it's more general. And I just want to read this part.
Then my attending angel directed me to the city again, where I saw 4 angels winging their way to the gate of the city, and were just presenting the golden card to the angel at the gate.
Okay, now What does this tell us? The attending angel directed me to the city again, where I saw four angels winging their way to the gate of the city and were just presenting the golden card to the angel at the gate. Now, I may be not understanding this properly. Maybe it's using it in a generic sense, but it would seem that these four angels that are described here, and these are the four angels that are also described in the book of Revelation, are presenting this card as a singular card, one single card, because it references their mission as they went to earth. Four angels, one card. That's interesting. Now, this is all that's there. And that's what we find here. So, people who find it strange that Ellen White would mention a golden card, perhaps they're just not thinking in terms of mission records and the idea that heaven uses records. Um, some have thought that it had to do with William Foy's use of a golden card. But if we look at his references, and I'm not going to go there right now just because I want to get to the other books, but he talks about humans having golden cards and others having golden cards, none exactly in this precise way. So the fact that there's a similarity of a golden card doesn't mean that she gets hers from him any more than any other keywords that somebody else might use that are used in different contexts. I didn't acquire Spiritual Gifts Volume 1. I have replications of it, but not the old ones. But I did get this Spiritual Gifts Volume 2, which is Ellen White's expansion on her life experience. And this came in handy this past week as I was discussing the matter of her dreams and the green cord that she received in the dream from the angel that was leading her up and down the stairs. And that green cord, as she says in this book, represented faith. Now, that's as much as she left it for that part of the dream. But as she expounds on that later, she says it showed her the simplicity of trusting in God. Now, I don't know if you've worked with cords like I have. I have an extension cord that if I am not careful, it gets knotted up and it's much more difficult to use. So when she was told not to leave the cord, but to exercise the cord, to stretch it out, it's an indication of using it. And she says it represents faith. So, and she also said in those later accounts that it was through this that she understood how simple faith and trust in God is. She just stretches it out and she's in communion with Jesus. All right, second volume. Let's move along. I also have, I have a second copy of that volume. Also have volume 3, and this one she describes what she calls facts of faith. And I just want to read to you a little bit of what she says.
Since the great facts of faith, connected with the history of holy men of old, have been opened to me in vision, also the important fact that God has nowhere lightly regarded the sin of the apostate, I have been more than ever convinced that ignorance as to these facts, and the wily advantage taken of this ignorance by some who know better, are the grand bulwarks of infidelity. If what I have written upon these points shall help any mind, let God be praised.
So she starts going through these stories of the from the garden, the creation and the fall of man, and she tells about the world before the flood and what brought it on. She talks about the early patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, his sons, all the way down to the Passover and the delivery of the law of God. That's in volume 3. And she emphasizes facts of faith. She wants to build on faith. So what she's doing is applying the word. And she has insights, she says, from God. These are in her visions, but she's not professing to have every detail in a vision. It's the facts of faith. So it's how to apply them. That's what God gave her. Not something brand new, but how to apply it. And that's very practical. Then volume 4 I have here. And it is interesting because it picks up on the facts of faith again. And it also includes the first 10 testimonies in it because they wanted that information to be available. And it picks up in the sanctuary in the wilderness and goes on down to the time of David and Solomon. And that's as far as it goes, except that it jumps to the Messiah. It doesn't go through all the latter part of the Old Testament. it goes to the Messiah and the preparation for the coming of the Messiah. Quite a nice exposition there that is similar to Desire of Ages in its first chapter, as it talks about the first two chapters, talking about preparation spiritually and in fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. And then there's a chapter on health. Chronology is important. I want to take you to this statement we see here in answering questions. This is a question. Did you receive your views upon health reform before visiting the Health Institute at Dansville, New York, or before you had read works on the subject? That's a specific question, and her answer is given here.
It was at the house of Brother A. Hilliard, at Otsego, Michigan, June 6, 1863, that the great subject of health reform was opened before me in vision. I did not visit Dansville till August, 1864, 14 months after I had the view. I did not read any works upon health until I had written Spiritual Gifts, volumes 3 and 4, Appeal to Mothers, and had sketched out most of my 6 articles in the 6 numbers of How to Live.
As I said, chronology is important. In his book, Prophetess of Health, Ron Numbers tries to build the case that she got her materials from others. But we've learned in these 2 volumes, volume 4, that has her article on health. This is published in 1864, and that's the article on health that she mentions having sketched that out. In 3 and 4, actually, it's only in 4. And the 6 articles. Now, this book, Health, has most of it is not from Ellen White. There are some articles from Ellen White, 6 articles she mentions, but most of it is selected from these works. So it is published in 1865. It's after the vision. It is after they had already investigated Jackson's place. So chronologically, she is stating the truth. And a careful study of these volumes will bear that out. Okay, I have one more book I just want to show as I'm trying to do this in completeness. This is not a book of Ellen White. This is James White's book, and it's called Life Incidents. You can see this one's not in as good a shape as some of these others, but he recounts his history, the movement from his point of view, and visits that he made early before the disappointment of 1844. You can see how much of this is included in that history. So when we start to get to the third message and the history of the third message, that's where we get to Ellen White's story, and he includes in here some on Bates and some on Ellen White, her experience, and he sketches that out. He also makes mention of some of her visions, and he makes the statement that she does not breathe. This book was published in 1868, and so it's looking back over their experience from the beginning of the Advent movement until that time. And he mentions here that he baptized her a second time. He doesn't give the time frame for that, but it seems to correspond to their understanding of the Sabbath. So they're married first, and then they accept the Sabbath. She receives a vision on the Sabbath after they had done the biblical study, and she's baptized because she sees fuller light. And this volume gives us those beginnings. James White is business, and when he tells history, he doesn't go into as great a detail as he does into biblical subjects, and this is no different. A big section of this is on the law and the gospel, and so it's interesting what he notes in this volume and in the review articles when he is describing what took place. He is actually the earliest witness of the fact that she did not breathe in vision. He mentions it here, but he also mentioned it early on with one of her visions. And then others repeated the same thing, and Loughborough had eyewitnesses who attested to that same fact. Well, I was excited about these books, and I just wanted to share with you a little bit about them and how that they have enriched studies just recently within the last couple of weeks. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this.
To keep up with the latest in this series, be sure to subscribe to this channel